What's up, Dragon Brood? So I am fresh off of playing the Streamer Early Access event thanks to Wizards of the Coast. And after like 11 hours of playing content, talking about Zendikar with everybody, we have some thoughts. And I think it's going to surprise you some of the kind of conclusions we came to. And admittedly, I want to say up front, we're making these assumptions on day 0. Obviously, the decks we played against weren't the most cleaned up, but I think some of the things may still surprise you a little bit. So we're definitely going to talk about some of those things. But before we do that, remember, I need you to like this video to get it in front of more people, to hit the subscribe button because that shows me that you love everything we're doing, and then hit that notification bell because that's for you to make sure you get notified every time I have a video, especially stuff like these up that are good kind of videos to get you in front of everything going on for the format with the set releasing today. Now, all that being said, let's say the most surprising thing today was Stonecoil Serpent isn't as good as it used to be. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not, like, y'all know I have Stonecoil Serpent in several of my lists, and I am a fan of the card, but I won't say it's terrible, but it's definitely lost some of its luster. There's the new white apparition, right, that removes a creature. Well, they get to remove a Stonecoil Serpent for no drawback. Like, if you kill it, you don't get anything back because Stonecoil Serpent costs 0. One of the best removal cards, especially out of this set, is a 1 mana removal spell in black that destroys something power or converted mana cost 2 or less. That means you're going to spend 4 or 5 mana on a Stonecoil Serpent. They're going to remove it on their turn for 1 black mana. That's going to happen quite a bit. And also remember that one of the things that made Stonecoil Serpent so good is that in Ravnica, there's a lot of multicolor things. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of those things because, well, those sets are no longer in standard. So there's still things. I mean, like Rada and the new, I think, Brush Elemental or whatever that thing is. Like, there's a few things out there, but not nearly as many as existed before. I think there's some decks where it's still fine. Say you want to play it in like Selesnya counters and things like that. It makes total sense, but it's not as ubiquitous as maybe it needs to be like it was previously. Not a bad card, but like I said, some of the luster has kind of come off that shine a little bit. Interesting point number 2. There's actually a fair amount of 1 toughness creatures getting played. Whether that's Scoot Swarm or Lotus Cobra or the Kargan Warrior guy, Kargan Intimidator, that's it. Still learning the names of these new cards. But there's a lot of low toughness things. So, Cinderclasm or something of that nature is a card you should probably be considering right now. Especially when your opponent gets like a Scoot Swarm and then they like made a copy. Look, these all made 3 copies. Like, that happens quite a bit. And people are playing a lot of the ramp decks and really trying to play stuff with the Scoot Swarms into the landfall situations. So there's going to be a lot of that going on. So finding a way to deal damage, it may not seem like much dealing 1 damage to things, but it actually really is a big deal. And there's going to be some matchups you're definitely going to want that. Now, you may be sideboarding it in best of 3. Not sure if it's good enough to main deck, but there also are other decks, things like the rogue decks that have a fair amount of 1 toughness things as well. So it's not like it's a dead card, just something to think about. Third thing, saw Lotus Cobras hanging out in several Gruul lists. And I don't know if it's supposed to or not yet. I don't know if it depends on the type of deck you're building. If you're trying to go big to the 5 mana things and maybe you want a Lotus Cobra for that reason, or maybe you're just playing it and just hoping to play multiple spells in a turn, like that's reasonable. The problem though is kind of if you don't get that big thing or you don't get the extra land for the payoff, does the deck still function the same or as efficiently without it? And if so, would you be better off playing a more intimidating card like, say, Kargan Intimidator in place of playing the Lotus Cobra? I don't know yet. I think the jury's still out on that one, but it is something we saw quite a bit of. Fourth thing, there was a lot of Omnath. People seem to really be big on the ramp decks, playing like Omnath, Uro, Lotus Cobra, but the truth is there's a lot of times that if you just had a removal card for their Omnath, or in cases where they ramped up to playing like a Terror of the Peaks, and you just get rid of that, they really didn't do much. I saw several times even where they got a bunch of the mana, but you know, maybe their payoff was just one ultimatum. And if the ultimatum missed or got like two to play that didn't really do much, they still lost. So I'm not a fan of the deck. I think it's one of those things that was kind of fun even in the previous standard, but we had some versions of it and I didn't really like it then. And I'm not sure I'm on board and really think it's that great now. I like what it's trying to do. I think the concepts are solid, and it's possible maybe we just haven't found the right build or layout for it just yet. But as it stands, the versions most people were playing this, well, I was going to say this week, but literally just yesterday, I wasn't that impressed with it. There are a lot of rogue decks. And I get it, right? Rogues have been a fan favorite. I've mentioned it here on the channel that several content creators I speak with had multiple people saying, build a rogue deck last season, and it just wasn't good. So people were obviously waiting and clamoring for a rogue deck. As it turns out, blue-black rogues are the best thing to be doing. There's really kind of just two versions. Either you're playing just the straight up creature heavy, try to flip cards in your opponent's yard, maximize your damage, or you're playing the type with a lot of flash effects and trying to take advantage of like the Slither Wisp or whatever. And that's kind of it. I think those are really your only two options. I'm more partial to the just straight up creature version. That's the one I saw being more consistent today. And well, yesterday, weird, I don't know, time is a thing and COVID and making decks for the future. But you get what I'm saying. During the early access event, I saw more success coming out of the rogue decks that were trying to play creatures and back it up with stuff like Drown in the Lock and various counter spells. And that seemed to be more beneficial. I don't even know what thing I'm on. This might be 6. So many things. But mill strategies are out there. People are trying to play mill decks, but I think we still have the same issue we had before. I think we ran into opponents that were just playing a bunch of mill stuff and a bunch of counter spells to back it up. But the reality is, if your opponent is able to deal with your Teferi's tutelage, that's kind of it. Those decks don't do much after that. Even if you don't, the problem is if they slip through 1 or 2 creatures, you're not doing much to deal with those. So if you're playing all these defensive cards and spell counters or whatnot, you're not milling your opponent. So you almost end up having to put your whole game plan on hoping the crab lives, so every time you play a land you're getting to mill a couple of cards, or the tutelage lives, so every time you draw you get to mill a couple of cards. If your opponent deals with either one of those, your plan kind of goes up in flames pretty quick. We had some games where we played against some mill decks, and the only ones we really lost are where our draws were just junky and we really didn't play any type of aggression or anything that really posed an issue for the opponent. And one of those was with the Wizards deck that wasn't all that great. Speaking of that Wizard deck, is it still not great, y'all? At least the version I had, or the one that Adam Yeoman 5 Hernandez made, was also not great. I'm not even sure why. It's one of those things that I think lots of fans want to build different types of Izzet spells or whatever, and I tried again and it just didn't feel great. Those games felt like very much of a struggle. There were a couple that weren't even really close at all. Even the ones that were close felt like we were just fighting uphill, and yeah, just not something I can get behind. Yeah, and there may be better versions. Somebody who's a bigger fan of the deck or those colors may have built a better version, but not something I can recommend. Modal double face cards, they're good. I think one of the thing is we have to learn the best ways to play them and the timing around playing them, but they are very, very strong. So I would not turn my nose up with those, and don't really be surprised if you see a lot of them. And remember that the ones you can pay life for, you don't have to pay the life. They do come into play tapped, so really think about that in your strategy. And be aware of what's in your hand. I know multiple times during the day I made mistakes thinking about other things, and then you just have that lapse for a second where you forget that, like, oh yeah, I could play this as a land this turn, or you take your actions for the turn and you're debating if you could play the land after combat. A bunch of combat things happen and then you forget because you don't see a land in your hand. You see the front face of the card and you forget to play a land. So that's something we're definitely going to have to get used to as Magic players now that these exist. Something that's always going to be there, kind of top of mind. It'd be interesting to see if in the future we get more of them, because we know that there's going to be modal just double face lands in whatever we're calling the next set. The Frost land, whatever, Thor land in Magic. Kaldheim, there you go. We know the other 4 is supposed to be in there. So are there other modal double face cards? Maybe. I don't know, but it'd be interesting. I like where this is going, though. It actually did add some strategic decisions to a lot of the different mulligans and game choices, and that's not a bad thing. Equipment really played out pretty well, and having equipment that almost works like an aura, whenever you play it automatically equipped to something, that's a big deal. And maybe that's the thing that equipment needed, right? We kind of needed something to bolster them or kind of give everybody a little more excitement as to, hey, you should be playing this. And because if we look at it, right, unless the equipment were just really low cost to play and really low cost to equip, we really didn't play them, right? Even Embercleave we only play because it's a potential game ender, and even then we can play it for 3 or 4 mana and it just comes into play equipped, right? Well, the Sky Maul, or Maul, or the Skyclave Maul, or whatever we call it, I think I just call it Sky Maul, kind of like, you know, the magazine you get on the airplanes. But the Sky Maul turned out to be very good. The Landfall green one turned out to be pretty good. So there's a few different ones that actually I think you need to give a look to. I know you might have it in your head that equipment's bad, and if it falls off the creature, having to pay for it. But even on the Sky Maul, think about the fact that we pay 4 for Embercleave, right? Quite often. So being able to pay 4 to re-equip something, and then depending on the deck where you're able to make it bigger because it has equipment, or something else gets a bonus because it's equipped, like it could have even bonus effects that you wouldn't normally even get from something like an Embercleave with it already being on the table. So give equipment another look. It actually is pretty legit. And party decks, I don't know what to make of those yet. Like, I still think you don't necessarily need to have all the entire party out to make the cards worthwhile. Oftentimes just reducing a card by 3 is really good anyway, and it even allows you to get several cards below rate, which is kind of nice. But ultimately in the end, I didn't feel like, because I had party in a deck, that it felt like a different type of deck. It almost just felt like a bonus action, if that makes sense. Like my Mardu deck, I updated it, played it. It actually played fine, but generally it kind of just played like a low-key Mardu humans kind of deck that occasionally got to do a thing with 3 or 4 cards a little bit cheaper because you had the party keyword that it was worried about. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. Maybe it's one of those things that's not going to really be realized until we get to next summer and we have the D&D set that's likely going to double down on party. But for now, I mean, I feel like I'm bursting people's bubbles here, but like, it feels like party is just a thing that your deck occasionally gets to take advantage of. Like, I don't feel like, it's not like saying, hey, I'm playing a rogue deck or a merfolk deck, or I don't know, even a deck full of tramples or whatever, right? Like, it doesn't feel cohesive. It's just like you're playing a bunch of reasonable quality cards that you would do anyway if you were playing rogues or if you were playing humans, but they just happen to have some different abilities to give you an occasional bonus. Now, were any of the things with party bad? Not terribly. And usually, like I said, you were getting 2 or 3 mana off the cost or activation of a lot of things, and that was okay, but I wasn't overly impressed. So I'm gonna have to go back to the drawing board on that and see if I'm missing something. I'm sure somebody probably built a better party list, so feel free to show it to me, put it in the comments. But I don't think we're quite there yet. A lot of people still want to play Abzan counters. I think Abzan counters is fine, but I'm still a bigger fan of Selesnya counters. I think the mana consistency is a big deal, and I still think black only is really bringing to the table Grakmaw. You do get access to Pulokranos. I'm not sure if that's really the thing you need though, because you have other cards that can help you through some situations. And you can get Mythos of Nethroi, which is a pretty solid card, so not gonna hate that. But in general, you're giving up a lot from other colors as well to be able to do that, and again, making your mana more inconsistent. If I were to make a suggestion, I would probably say, just if you really want to play Grakmaw, just find some type of Golgari decks that really can use it, and maybe get a bonus from the counters, and just play green-white Selesnya counters. I don't know if you really need to be mixing both. I think Abzan counters was fun, and it is still somewhat competitive, but I felt like more consistently I was being competitive with the Selesnya counters. Again, this is kind of day zero stuff, so maybe after the lists get cleaned up, I can be talked back into Abzan counters, but here in the beginning of the format, I'm not sold on it. In conclusion, Zendikar is a hell of a lot of fun. I gotta admit, I mean, Zendikar Rising brought a lot of new stuff to the table, a lot of interesting cards, a lot of big stuff, a lot of stuff if you want to go low to the ground, different combo-y type things, and that's all good stuff. Nothing to complain about there at all. It's going to shake up the format. Yes, you're still going to have your big pillars of the format with like Uro and whatnot, but there's all answers to those, and there's things you can do. They're powerful cards, but they're not cards you can't overcome. The only dumb card we're still dealing with is Ugin, because there's more ways to even ramp, you know, and get Ugin out with stuff like Lotus Cobras and whatnot. But aside from that, Ugin's the real only issue card, and that's just because the card has no play to it. That's my only complaint, is that you just ramp to 8, do your thing. Does your opponent have a way to deal with deal with Ugin the following turn? If not, then it sits on the table and just takes over the win, right? Not really a card that has skill involved, either to play for it, against it, or even to get it onto the table. But Uro, Omnath, those are still going to be around, but so are things like Terror of the Peaks, Elder Gargaroth. You're going to be able to play all your low to the ground warriors and landfall stuff. Like, all of those things matter. So there's going to be a lot of real jockeying for position here in the first couple of days, even the first couple of weeks. I think it's going to take us a while to really hone in on the perfect spot in this metagame and really figure things out. Also want to say, if you haven't, please remember to like this video to help us get in front of more people. Hit that subscribe button so I know that you appreciate these videos that I'm doing. And then hit the notification bell, because that's for you to remind you every time we have a video up. Also, don't forget we now have a merchandise store, so if you would like to help me out and support the channel, I'd be highly appreciative. And you can find the link down below in the description. You can also find the links to our Discord channel, any of our deck lists that go up in any of our videos. You can always find those in descriptions. And if you want to find me on Twitch and whatnot, all those links are down there as well. But that's all I have for you for now. Have a hell of a lot of fun playing Zendikar Rising. Good luck, and we'll see you next time.